Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Eric Dane, who plays Cal Jacobs on Euphoria, season 2 of which ended earlier this year. It's a great performance, Eric. I'm so excited to talk to you about this. I love the show. I love your work. This season for Cal was really, I think, like a level up from season 1. And I guess, like, what were your, immediate reactions on hearing where the character was going to go when you were talking to Sam Levinson about the second season?
Well, I knew he was going to get a backstory. Everybody gets a backstory. And, I also knew that I would be more heavily involved than I was the season prior. And, we read all of the episodes at once. We have a very long table read. We break it up actually into 2 days. We read 4 episodes and 4 episodes. And the first 4 episodes, I was obviously very happy with. Specifically episode 4, but episode 3 I thought was fantastic. It was almost like a movie within a movie, because I felt like it may sort of engender some empathy for Cal. And then when Cal gets the opportunity to come out to his family, I thought, well, this is going to either come off 2 ways. People are either going to think hate me even more, or they're going to see some humanity to this character and they're going to be able to identify with him a little bit, and I think the latter is what happened, which I'm very pleased with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought it's a great, I think that I wanted to talk to you about all of that, but since you brought up episode 4, that scene is so incredible. For people who know or are watching, obviously, Cal, we find out about his backstory as a young man, and he had a romantic kind of unrequited feelings for one of his friends, and goes back to that bar as an adult, and then comes home and kind of has this big confrontation with his family. And I just thought that scene is great. You mentioned, like, I think it's a great scene because I feel like there is humor in it. There's obviously like deep, like, anger and then sadness and stuff. I get when you got that sequence and that scene, like, there are probably a lot of different ways you could have played it as an actor. How did you kind of land on what you did? Because I think it works so well. Because like you said, I think it does generate empathy for Cal that wasn't there previously, but also doesn't tilt it too far where you're like playing him as like a hero scene, I guess. I don't know. I just thought it was like really, really well done and kind of like a complicated thing to play. So I guess, like, how did you decide how you wanted to do it and like where you started?
Well, it was really well done. The writing was terrific. So I had a good jumping point. As an actor, I guess you always want to create some level of truth to the work, but I felt like all I have to do is just make this as true as I possibly can. When somebody is speaking their truth, it's very difficult to be mad at them, irrespective of what they're saying. If they're telling you the truth, A, sometimes it hurts, but B, it's the truth. There's really not much pushback you can generate when somebody is sitting there in front of you and telling you exactly what's going on with them, So what I tried to do is I tried to make it as sincere as possible. And I think that characteristic is lost on a lot of people. But for me, one of the superpowers an actor can have is sincerity.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you said that. And that's the word I think that I didn't even realize I was looking for until you just said it, because it's such a sincere scene. Like, it really does. It comes from the heart. And you could tell that what Cal is saying there is like genuine, and not, even though it is like obviously probably not what his family wants to hear at the same time, but it is like really genuine, and it is like his feeling and his experience. And yeah, just, I think that seems incredible. Obviously, I know I've seen other interviews you talked about this. Obviously, Cal has his penis is hanging out, for lack of a better nuance. And it is, I know it was a prosthetic as well. I just want to ask you, not just to, like, knowing that was going to be how Cal is, in that state of undress, I guess, or however you want to call it. How did that affect or play into the performance as well, or did it at all? Or like, I just like, how did you, like, was it freeing to have that, or like, what was that like?
A challenge for the actor. Well, I got to tell you, the hardest part about that was the logistics of it and working that sort of mechanical rig that allowed the prosthetic to pee.
Yeah.
So that was the only obstacle. Other than that, you know, it really worked for the scene. Letting it all hang out is, you know, we're giving a whole new meaning to that. And it was incredibly freeing, you know. I mean, I don't recommend anybody try it, but if you find yourself in those circumstances and you're having a moment with your family and your penis is out, you'll find that it's also incredibly free.
Right. It's just a great, the whole way that whole scene starts, because you obviously he's like peeing, and then I think your wife, Marcia comes down, right? And then you're like, I think Cal says like, I think I'm really lonely. It's just the way you kind of hit that line. It's just incredible. And it like just really works. The whole thing is like so well done.
I had friends calling me up the next day going, I think I'm lonely.
It's just a great line. It's so good. I also want to ask you about that episode. That whole episode is wonderful. Obviously, episode 4, you have that great scene where Cal goes to the bar. Obviously, we had that great moment with Derek, I think, earlier in the flashback when the younger actor is playing the character and stuff. I did found that scene like so, it's like really heartbreaking. And I think your performance there is so, again, like doing a lot of different things at once. Like Cal's having like, for lack of a better word, like a euphoric moment, but also obviously like going through such, you know, personal hardship and like kind of confusion and all these different things. Like, can you talk a little about that sequence too? And like, again, like making, like getting that performance right where it needs to be. It's just such a great scene. And I think you're working and it's so good.
Oh, thank you. You know, Sam, we had 1,000-foot mags on the camera. We're shooting in film. And Sam was just like, okay, come into this bar. We're just going to roll out on everything and just do what you feel like doing, you know? And that opened up it was just allowed for an enormous safety net when dealing with that stuff, just the freedom to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. And just knowing that there was no action to cut. It was just, we were just going to roll out on everything. And of course we went in to get coverage and there was, you know, your standard setups, but for the most part, it was just like, just let it rip. And, you know, it got a little messy for the wrestling stuff, which was fun. But I think for the most part, you know, Cal is having this moment where he's, you know, he hasn't been to this bar in 20 something years. And this was the place where he felt like he was at home, you know? So going into this bar and having those feelings and having the flashback and seeing Derek and dancing with the man and subsequently, you know, getting into this playful sort of brawl that led to his bouncing from the bar, brings him to this moment where, you know, he's just like, fuck this. I want my life back. So the whole sequence in the bar was sort of a journey back to consciousness, you know, and then he sees that mural of John Wayne. And he's like, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to pee on the foyer and I'm going to tell my family exactly how I feel about this.
Yeah. It's really great. You mentioned like, I mean, obviously like the way the show is shot, obviously on film and all, and even earlier talking about like how they're all like kind of like almost like standalone movies, all these, it's just the show as a viewer, I'm like always, one of the things I really love about Euphoria is the filmmaking. And I think Sam is incredible eye. And like, it just feels like literally like I'm watching like a great movie every week I get to watch. Like, you know what I mean? It just feels different than like regular or episodic television or stuff that I've seen before. I guess as an actor, like how is that? It seems like that experience is coming through in the production of it as well. But I guess like I'd love to hear you talk about it, like how it.
Well, he's an incredibly inventive director.
Yeah.
He's an inventive director. And like you said, he has a great eye. Most of the shots are designed ahead of time. They've been vetted and thoroughly thought out. So there's not a lot of guesswork for the actor when I get to set and we start working out the blocking of these scenes, because the camera's doing one thing. So it doesn't leave a ton of space for the actor to come up with any wise ideas, you know. And I like working within those sort of the parameters that provides, the sort of the guardrails that Sam Levinson puts up. I really dig as an actor, because, you know, I want to let it rip, but I also want to know that I'm working in the right ballpark.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So if I know what the shot's doing and I know what I'm doing, you know, there's usually a pretty nice sort of synchronicity between the two.
Right. You mentioned earlier how like you expected Cal to get a backstory and stuff, and like obviously like that's kind of like part of the storytelling of the show and stuff. I guess, was the direction it ended up going with Cal something you had expected, like even back in season 1, or like how did you change, or did you change like how you thought about him between season 1 and season 2?
You know, so playing this guy, the first thing that I cannot do is judge this character. But, you know, that said, season 1, Cal's very, very contained, very methodical. Everything is played very close to the vest. You know, Sam described it to me. He said, look, you know, in season 1, you were in a Fincher film. It was almost like a thriller. In season 2, it's a Coen Brothers movie. Cal is a Coen Brothers movie. And I was like, aha, that I can understand. Okay. So once you get the tone, you know, the rest kind of falls in place.
That's awesome. And that's a really great, it's so funny hearing you say that, because again, like, yeah, thinking about like Cal getting beat up by Ashtray is definitely a Coen Brothers scene for sure.
Exactly.
And it's like really funny hearing that. Obviously, so like a couple more things and then I'll let you go. But I'm just like, you obviously, Cal and Nate have such a contentious relationship. And I think you and Jacob Elordi together it's so intense and so good. And like, obviously you kind of like have that scene we were talking about in episode 4, where Cal calls him like I think it's like his greatest disappointment or whatever, right? Like, which I think you could read in a bunch of different ways. But then also you come back at the very end in the finale, and that's another intense sequence where I was like, again, not even sure where it was going to go. I guess, can you talk a little about like how you work with Jacob and how that kind of relationship has evolved throughout this season, I guess?
Jacob and I have a very profound connection. We, and I think that translates to our dynamic on screen. I love that dude like a brother, you know, and although the relationship on screen is contentious, I think the sort of dynamic that we have off screen facilitates in creating that pretty strong connection on screen. I just think he's a tremendous actor. He's super present. He gives a lot. He's easy to work with in that regard. So some of it may just be that we do have that connection, and a lot of it is just speaks to his skill level as an actor.
Yeah. I think he's so physically imposing too, and I think you guys are a great match. Just like,
I've never worked with anybody that big before in my life.
He's so big.
I know. I've never worked with anybody I've had to look up to.
It's incredible. I obviously, I'm sure you can't, like, even if you knew, you couldn't spoil it. But season 2 ends with Cal and seemingly getting taken off,
arrested,
right. Certainly, and like, not in a great spot for Cal, at least, though maybe something that was deserved based on, perhaps his behavior. Or I guess, I don't know. What do you hope for? Where do you you can't spoil it or even talk about it probably, but like, what do you hope for? What's going to happen with Cal in season 3, I guess? Or
I can tell you what I hope doesn't happen. And I hope that I don't play half of season 3 behind glass talking to Nate through a phone.
Yes.
Same. I'm sure whatever it is, Sam will figure it out. It'll be super interesting, and I'm all on board for whatever.
Yeah. And the other thing was, I guess, the show is obviously, I think, a phenomenon in season 1, but season 2, to me at least, felt like it really leveled up from a cultural standpoint. I know it was like one of the biggest shows HBO has had since like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It certainly is like a huge hit. I guess, have you noticed, like, Is that something you're able to notice? We're in a pandemic and maybe not as like people aren't walking down the street and like as interactive as maybe would have been like a few years ago. But I guess, is that something you have noticed, that the response to the show has been so much louder and that there is so much more attention on the show and in your performance as well?
I think all roads led to Rome with this show. I think there's a huge appetite for something like this. And I think that it's so well executed across the board that, it was destined to find an audience. And of course, Zendaya, is Zendaya.
Mm-hmm.
Z is like as culturally iconic and relevant as anybody gets, in this day and age. And, her leadership, it all trickles down from there.
Yeah. It's a great show. I just love it so much. And I think your performance is great. So it's been great talking to Eric Dane, plays Cal Jacobs on Euphoria, streaming now on HBO Max, and can catch up if you haven't. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, brother. Be well.